Bismillah.
Bismillah, yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyid al-Anbiya wal-Mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Allahumma rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahla wa anta taj'alu al-hazana idha shi'ta sahla. Amma ba'd. So we start by praising Allah the Almighty and sending the best of salutations upon His beloved, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I do apologize for the technical problems we had. It's all Shamsu's fault.
Sorry, guys.
It's all Shamsu's fault, that's what I can say. Anyway, inshallah, we'll make a quick start, inshallah. It's already 8 o'clock already. So today, at the beginning, what I want to do is I want to make 2 corrections from last lesson, 1 clarification and 1 answer, before we go ahead, inshallah. Yeah? So one of the main things about knowledge is al-ilm wa amana. Ilm is a trust. So if somebody messes up somewhere or makes a mistake, misspeaks, it needs to be corrected as soon as possible. So inshallah, I sort of made a mistake last week, inshallah, I just want to correct those. First correction is breaking a fast by mistake. So last week what we discussed was if somebody forgetfully, they ate, then for that person, their fast continues as normal for the rest of the day. They'll continue fasting as normal, and there's nothing to make up afterwards. But if somebody continued eating out of mistake or whatever it might be, out of mistake, so they know that their fasting was Ramadan, but they thought that my fast is broken now, so let me continue eating, or they made whatever mistake, a mistake in judgment and things like that, then they started eating. They thought it was okay to do it. For example, they thought, okay, because I've already eaten by forgetting once, I continue eating for the rest of the day. Now they're doing it purposefully. I said last week that there's no making up for it. Your fast is fine, but that was a mistake. Rather, they'll have to make that fast up later after Ramadan finishes, but there's no kaffarah for it at all. So kaffarah, inshallah, we'll be discussing that in detail today. So they don't need to make any or give any compensation, but they will need to make that day up, and that's across the board. All 4 schools say that. So I know I've seen these videos. I think Adam showed it to me. The guy slips up or something, and then all the food is just putting itself together, going into his mouth, and he's eating it, or by mistake it fell into my mouth. No, it's not going to count. You have to make up for it afterwards. After Ramadan is complete. Okay, everybody understand that so far? Okay. Second correction is eating objects which are not for consumption. So normally they're not edible. But if somebody ate something like a stone or a rock, or I don't know, they had a leaf in their mouth and they decided to swallow it, things like that. So last week I said that it does not break the fast, but it does break the fast, but there is no compensation for it. So if somebody, for example, they were brushing their teeth and the toothpaste went down, so it's not something that normally a person would eat. What would happen if somebody had it? Yeah. So doctor over there, he said shouldn't have it. Yeah. So confirmation, we've got our confirmation. We're missing our audiologist. No, sorry, our optometrist today. We've got our audiologist. We've got our dentist. Do you have a medical doctor in here? Are you a medical doctor?
It's fine.
Alhamdulillah. That's good. We've got an engineer over there.
We could rebuild the human body.
That's right. We've got a bit of everything here. Alhamdulillah. Anyway, so if somebody did eat something that's not normally edible, the fast would break, but you have to make up for it later. So if somebody has some plastic or something or some paper or whatever, it might be chewing gum, somebody put some chewing gum in their mouth, and normally we don't swallow the chewing gum, but we shouldn't. But if somebody did, the fast would break, and you make up for it afterwards, and that is the opinion for all 4 schools, okay? Okay, so the clarification is, and I said this last week, but I just wanted to re-emphasize it, the nose is considered to be a manfad, so a passageway to the stomach. So I don't know scientifically is it, the doctor maybe could tell us, but Islamically is considered to be a manfad, a passageway to the stomach, and therefore if anything goes up the nose, the nasal passage, it will break the fast. So nasal sprays and things like that will invalidate the fast, and this is the opinion of all 4 schools. Okay, everybody understand that so far? And with that, we lead on to the next part, which is the question that Sheikh Shams asked last week. Will a nosebleed cause the fast to break? So So the simple answer is no, unless it enters the mouth until it reaches the stomach. So if somebody was bleeding so much that it went down the lips and into the mouth and then they swallowed it, obviously that would break the fast. Or if somebody sniffed it up and then they could taste it in the back of their mouth and they didn't spit it out but rather they swallowed it, it would break the fast. Everybody understand that? Yes? Okay. Any questions about that before we move on? Or anything related to that? No? Okay, so let's do some recap of questions from last week, inshallah. Cupping, does it break the fasting or not? Yes or no? Yes. According to who? Go on, Salman. You can't look at your notes, man. That's cheating. What's the point?
That's what it's for.
Yeah, but in your own time, not my time.
Hanbali, is it?
Hanbalis what?
Say that they broke their fast.
Okay, so good. The Hanbalis say that the fast is broken, and the rest say
That it's not. It's fine during fast, but it's not haram.
it's fine during fast, but it's not haram. So it's allowed.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Eye drops, yes or no?
No.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine.
It's not fine.
Who says it's fine and who says it's not fine?
I know it's not fine.
Huh?
It's not fine.
It's not fine. Make up your mind, man. Yes?
So basically, if the eye drop goes the way you taste it on your throat, then it breaks the fast by not letting it.
According to whom?
The Hanafi and the Shafi. Hanafi and the Maliki.
To go back to your notes. Check his notes. He's got everything. Anybody else can enlighten us? Not sure? Okay, homework for you guys. Look it up, inshallah. Alright, let's move on, inshallah. Okay, today, inshallah, we'll be discussing fasting whilst traveling. I think this will be very relevant to students. So let's read the hadith first, inshallah, and then after that, we'll go into the discussions. وعن جابر بن عبد الله رضي الله تعالى عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم خرج عام الفتح إلى مكة في رمضان فصام حتى بلغ قراع الغميم فصام الناس ثم دعا بقدح من ماء فرفعه حتى نظر الناس إليه ثم شرب فقيل له بعد ذلك إن بعض الناس قد صام فقال أولئك العصاة وفي لفظ فقيل له إن الناس قد شق عليهم الصيام وإنما ينتظرون فيما فعلت فدعا بقدح من ماء بعد العصر فشرب رواه مسلم. Narrated Abu Jabir or Jabir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu anhuma. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam departed to Mecca in Ramadan in the year of the conquest. What year did the conquest take place?
10th year.
Hijrah.
10th year? 8th year? 15th?
8th.
Which year?
8th year Hijrah.
8th year, yes. So the conquest of Mecca took place 8 years after the migration. He and the people fasted while he came to Qura al-Ghamim. So it's a location just outside of Mecca. He then called for a cup of water which he raised till the people looked at it. And then he drank. So he started the day as fasting and now he's come to this place and he's holding the cup up and he started to drink. He was told afterwards that some of the people had continued to fast and he said, those are the disobedient ones. Those are the disobedient ones. In another narration, it was said to him, meaning the Prophet ﷺ, the people have found the fast difficult and are waiting for what you will do. He then called for a cup of water after the Asr prayer and he drank, reported by Muslim. We'll read the next hadith inshallah and then we'll go into the discussion. وعن حمزة بن عمرو الأسلمي رضي الله تعالى عنه أنه قال يا رسول الله إني أجد بي قوة على الصيام في السفر فهل علي جناح فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هي رخصة من الله فمن أخذ بها فحسن ومن أحب أن يصوم فلا جناح عليه رواه مسلم وأصله المتفق عليه من حديث عائشة أن حمزة عمرو سأله. Narrated Hamza bin Amr al-Aslami radiyallahu anhu. He said, O Allah's Messenger, I find myself strong enough to fast while traveling. So is there any sin upon me if I fast? Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, it is a permission given by Allah and whoever acts upon it has done well. and whoever desires to fast would not be guilty of sin. Reported by Muslim, and it can also be found in Bukhari through Aisha radiallahu anha. So, from these 3 hadith, what we can understand immediately is that it is permissible for somebody who is traveling to not fast. This is permissible. But is there conditions to it and things like that? Yes, there is. There is a fringe opinion. It's the opinion of an Andalusian scholar, his name was Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri, that if somebody is traveling, he must break his fast. He is not allowed to fast. If he does fast, he is sinful. But that's a fringe opinion and it's not accepted by the rest of the Ummah. So the vast majority, or everybody else, the 4 schools, they say that a person who is traveling, he is allowed to break his fast. No problem at all whatsoever. And there's many hadith other than these. I mean, this hadith up there right now, it is permission given by Allah. And there's many other hadith like that which establish the permissibility of somebody to break their fast. And as for the first hadith, if you see it, so this hadith, it tells us that it's allowed. It's permission given by Allah, and whosoever wants to do it, no problem, and whoever wants to continue fasting, not an issue. But we see in the first hadith, if you go back to the first hadith that we did, the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say about these individuals who continued fasting? Those are the disobedient ones. Now what can we understand from that? Because they continued fasting, even though the Prophet ﷺ, he held his cup up and he started to drink. Huh?
Boasting, isn't it?
Boasting.
They didn't follow Allah's commands.
They didn't follow Allah's commands. Yes, brother Abdurrahman.
They were against the Sunnah.
They went against, okay, maybe not the Sunnah, but the actions of the Prophet ﷺ. So they continued fasting. So the Prophet ﷺ, he called them sinful people, disobedient people. Now, if we just looked at this hadith without analyzing the other one, the conclusion we should come to is we have to break our fast. Because if you don't break your fast, you're disobedient. Because those individuals that did not break it, they were called disobedient people. Now, does that mean that if somebody doesn't break the fast, and this is what the opinion Ibn Hazm has taken, the fringe opinion, that you have to break your fast, they're going to be sinful? Is that a generic blanket policy, or is our understanding of it wrong, or what is it? So what we need to understand here is that when the Prophet ﷺ, he lifted his cup, this was him giving an indirect instruction to everybody that you have to break your fast. Okay? An indirect instruction to everybody that break your fast. Now, after the instruction has come, now they didn't fulfill that command and they continued fasting. They're being disobedient not to the fact that they're fasting, but they're being disobedient to the command of the Prophet ﷺ. This is what this hadith means. Does everybody understand that so far? So it's not the fact that because you're fasting, you are disobedient. No, it's not that. It's you went against the word or the command of the Prophet, now you're disobedient. You're being disobedient. So we can't use this hadith to derive the ruling that you must break your fast while you're traveling. Everybody with me so far? Okay, excellent. And from the second hadith, and there's many other hadith like that, Eunus radiallahu anhu, he makes mention that when we used to travel, some of us used to fast and nobody would say anything, and others wouldn't fast and nobody would say anything. There was no blame on them at all. So there's many hadith who say that it's okay to break your fast. Now, this then goes down into different categories. Now, there's conditions which are applied before a person can or can't break their fast. So, discussion number one. What we understand from this hadith is that if a person, he was a traveler by night. So understand me carefully. Yeah? If a person is a traveler by night, which means he's not fasting anyway, and then during the night he makes an intention that he's going to fast during the day. Okay? And then the day started. So Fajr time kicked in and he started his fast. So he started his fast at 5 o'clock, let's say. 10 a.m., he decides, I no longer want to fast. Is he allowed to break his fast or not? Yes or no? He's a traveler anyway. Yeah, from night he's a traveler. but he's made the intention, I'm going to keep my fast. Fajr's gone, 10 o'clock, now you know what, I'm feeling a bit peckish, let me go get myself a Costa and let me break my fast. Is he allowed to do this or not?
No.
Yes.
No, yes. Who says no? Who says yes? Okay, so if we look at just this hadith alone, the one before this, we get the ruling that yes, you can, because the Prophet ﷺ, right at the end, he says it was after Salatul Asr. He started to drink. Yeah. So this is the opinion of the Shafi'i and the Hanbali school. After you made your intention at night that you're going to be fasting, despite being a traveler, if somebody then decides I want to break it, no problem, you can break it. So obviously that now leaves the Hanafi school and the Maliki school. The Hanafi school and the Maliki school, they say if you made the intention at night that you're going to fast and you did not take advantage of the discount that Allah gave you beforehand, after you started it, no, you can't now say that I want to break it. It's not going to be acceptable at all. You have to then complete your fast. And to the extent that the Maliki school, they say that if they break their fast, they will also have to do kaffarah. Okay, everybody following so far? So that is for the traveler by night. He's already a traveler by night, and before Fajr, he's made his intention, I'm going to fast. The day started, he's gone into the day, and now he wants to break his fast. He's still a traveler, by the way. He's still a traveler. So the ruling is the Hanbali and the Shafi'i school, they say yes, no problem, you make it up later one day. And the Hanafi and the Maliki school, they say no, you have to complete the fast. And why is it that you have to complete the fast? They take it from the ayah of the Quran. وَأَتِمُّ الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. So Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَأَتِمُّ الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. After you've started it, then complete the fast until the night. So they've given precedence over the hadith to the Quran ayah. And they will say, no, this is the exception made by the hadith. Does that make sense? And it's gone a bit more technical, and just giving you the explanation behind it for that reason. So that is issue number one, discussion number one. Okay, any more questions about that before I move on to the next discussion? Yes?
When it comes to, we're going to speak about later starting traveling during the day.
Okay, we're going to speak, that's next discussion, inshallah. Yes?
Would it be safer for Hanafi then to not make intentions until the
Yes.
Salah?
Yes. So as we know, the Malikis, they have to make an intention when?
Once at the start.
When Ramadan starts, right?
Yeah. So if they make it before the beginning of Ramadan, they're fine, isn't it? The Hanafis, they have until midday to make the intention. So yes, preferably don't make the intention until slightly more into the day. Okay, discussion number two now is, what about somebody who is a resident person and then he becomes a traveler during the daytime? Does that make sense? So he prayed Fajr at his hometown, in his house or in the local masjid, and he made the intention, he's had his suhoor, he's made the intention for fasting, and he's fasted, he started his fast. And then after starting the fast, at 12 o'clock he got a call, you have to make an emergency trip to Birmingham. Now the person has to travel. Is he allowed to break his fast or not? Who says yes and who says no? How many yeas and how many nays?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Okay, one?
No.
No. Yes? Yes. Okay. So the vast majority of the scholars, they say no. The only exception is Imam Ahmad. So the Hanbalis, they say it's okay to break your fast, and the other three schools, they say no, person is not allowed to break their fast. Okay, so a person is not allowed to break their fast. Now what about, okay, any questions around that? Everyone understand that so far? What about a traveler who then becomes a resident? The other way around. So I went to Birmingham, and the next day I traveled back after Fajr, and I got home, it takes about 2 hours, I'm home by 8 o'clock. So initially I was allowed to break my fast, now I've come back home, what do I do? Can I continue eating, or do I have to stop eating? Does that make sense?
This is the third point.
This is the third discussion, yes.
So you're not fasting already.
so I'm not fasting already. So do I have to be nil by mouth now and imitate a fasting person because now I've come back to residency? Or is it that I'm allowed to continue eating for the rest of the day?
So, what do you use the word?
You're not fasting.
Say again?
You have to
You
take.
can continue fasting.
You have
So-
to continue fasting, but
Imsak.
Imsak.
Talking about imsak, yes. Imsak.
Yeah.
So restraint from eating and drinking and anything else. So the Hanafi school, they say you have to stop eating. Yeah? And you have to imitate the fasting person. And the other three schools, they say that it's mustahab for you to stop eating and drinking and everything else. But if somebody does it, he won't be blameworthy.
so
Okay.
mustahab to.
Mustahab to be nil by mouth. And the same ruling is applied for a woman who comes off her periods during the day. Does that make sense? Because whilst they're on the periods, they won't be fasting, isn't it? But if, say, at 12 o'clock, noon, she's become clean now, and she's had a ghusl and everything else, praying dhuhr, what happens for the rest of the day? So the Hanafi opinion is that, no, nil by mouth now. Because now you have to, the obligation of fasting has come upon you. So you stay, you refrain from food for the rest of the day. And the other schools, they say, no, because they started the day in a manner where they were able to eat, then it's mustahab, it's preferred for them not to do it. But if they did do it, no issue at all. Everybody understand that? Any questions around that now? Travel. Yes, Sheikh.
What if you become stationary after you travel to a place?
Yeah.
You're not to break your fast, be stationary in a different location to your city.
What do you mean by that?
Like you said, you went to Birmingham.
Yeah.
And not the day you're traveling, but to say you're there for 2-3 days. Can you choose not to fast then as well?
Yes. So as long as you're considered to be a musafir, so we had this discussion about what's travel and not. 3 days or 15 days, we had that discussion. So whichever school you follow, if you're taking the 3-day opinion, so as long as you're there for 3 days, you can break your fast because you're considered to be a traveler, musafir. But anything more than that, then you're considered to be a resident, muqim, and therefore you can't break your fast.
So,
Yes.
how did come back to discussion point 2? How did Imam Ahmed come to the conclusion that saying yes about the resident becoming a traveler during the day that breaks his fast? Is there any reason? Or
They've got their reasons, but it's going to get complicated. That's why I'm not going into it.
Yeah, okay.
The istidlal, it's got Imam Shawkani, he goes into it in a lot of detail in Nailul Awtar. I think it's going to get quite complicated, so I'm not going to that. Any other questions about that? Okay. So remember the first condition, the first discussion, the condition is that by night they have to be a traveler. Does that make sense? They have to be a traveler by night. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah.
Okay, bismillah. Okay, so now the elderly and the chronically ill. What's the rulings around them? Okay, bismillah. وعن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال رخص للشيخ الكبير أن يفطر ويطعم عن كل يوم مسكينا ولا قضاء عليه رواه الدارقطني. Narrated Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, permission was given for an old man to break his fast in Ramadan and feed a poor for every day, and no makeup al-qada is required for him, reported by Ad-Darqutni and Al-Hakim, both of whom authenticated it. Okay, before we go into explaining it, what's missing there? What's missing? So this hadith is daif? No, man. So is this a hadith or not?
Yes. Is it not there?
An athar? Okay, potentially. Anybody else? Is this hadith, yes or no?
Yes.
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 No.
Why?
Because it's a Sahaba that's narrating.
Narrating, yes, excellent. So a hadith in which the Sahabi is narrating something which he himself cannot give permission for, or he himself cannot narrate about except through the Prophet ﷺ, that is also called a hadith. And it's given the same level as a statement of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of its acceptability. So when he says the permission was given, who's going to give this permission? He has not got the ability to give permission when it comes to ibadat. Actions of worship, the Sahaba don't have permission to give permission to do anything about that. It has to come from whom? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when it says permission was given, who gave the permission? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he gave for an old person to break his fast and feed a poor person to make up for it every day. And I forgot to bring my thingy with me today. Anyway, and no makeup. The person does not have to make up the fast. Now this will only apply to two individuals. This ruling. It applies for somebody who is considered to be marid muzmina, which means a person who is chronic or reached that age where you don't expect him to be able to have the strength later in life to make up the fast. Okay, so somebody very elderly, senior, and they can't do it, and we don't expect them to do it either afterwards. They're not going to suddenly become young again or get a burst of energy in the following years and be able to do it. Equally, somebody who is chronically ill, and there's no hope of that person becoming better again. So a doctor will say so-and-so is diabetic or something, and they need to take their insulin shots or something. Is that right? Yeah, diabetics and insulin, just to clarify. Yeah, so if somebody needs to do that, or somebody's on tablets and they need to take the tablets during the daytime, and there's no other way around it, then for that person, this hadith will apply to them. But if somebody is temporarily ill, do they have the choice of feeding somebody in place of fasting? No, they don't. They have to. What do they have to do? They have to make it up afterwards. The fast will be made up afterwards. That choice of feeding somebody is not there. Does that make sense? How much do we feed them? Anybody can tell me?
Goes by the custom of the place.
Custom of the place.
Yeah, no one being,
Huh?
no one being according to the doctor.
So you give them one sa' of food or something equivalent to that.
Every day.
Yeah. So I think we calculate it. We usually round it up to about 5 pounds, isn't it? Something you can buy flour with or whatever it might be. I'll give you the exact calculation. I've got actually a mud container, and it's about 4 of them. And I'll get that inshallah next week, and I'll show it to you guys what it looks like. And then you basically equal it out. So how much food can be put into that? How much is that worth, etc. And then that's where you get the calculation from. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. I think this is quite straightforward. So anybody who is ill to the point where they're not going to get better anymore, a cancer patient, they don't get better anymore. They won't be able to keep the fast. They need to be on the meds or morphine or whatever else they're on. For them, then they don't have to make the fast. And as long as somebody is paying on his behalf, or they've got wealth to pay for it, then for that person, there is no qada. And as for the person who is elderly and is not able to fast, then they will also do the same. Yes, Sheikh.
If someone is considered chronically ill and then recovers, does the ruling change for them?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'll have to double check. It's a very good question. So miraculously they get better or something, or they go into remission or something like that. Yes.
Are you going to cover the fact that what if someone can't afford to feed someone every day?
Yeah, we're going to come to that next. We'll come to that. Yes.
Yes, did you say about the person is exempted if they are diabetic, even if they are young, not elderly?
Yes, so if somebody needs to be on the medicine, they need to take their medicine during the daytime, and if they don't take the medicine, it's going to be harmful for them, then they won't be able to fast. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the idea is, even if, for instance, there is possibility to bring the meds earlier in the day.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. If they have to take it during the daytime,
yeah,
there's no way around it, then in that situation, the person will break the fast, and they'll follow. Well, again, if a person can make it up in the winter times and they don't need it during the day in winter, then it'll be fine. But if it's such medicines, maybe you have to have every few hours, whatever it might be. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. But if somebody has medicines that needs to be taken constantly throughout the day, 4 or 5 times in the day, and there's no chance of them being able to fast the entire day without having the medicine, and if they went without the medicine, it would be harmful for them, then for that person, this will apply.
Yeah, what I want to understand is is it related to the medicine or the food? Because for the case of diabetic, even if you manage to take the medicine before sugar, for instance,
Yeah.
but you are at risk of maybe having a problem during the day because you're fasting, because the medicine will bring the sugar level down. So is it related to the food, the possible?
It's the food, yes.
Yeah, the
So anything reaching the stomach.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm making sense here. Sorry. So
What I think what he's trying to say is like it's not the medication that they're taking at the beginning of the day. It's the fact they're not going to have food for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
That will drop their sugars low,
Okay.
and therefore they'll need to eat.
Okay.
Towards the end. Towards the
So
end of the fast.
anything which will be harmful for them, so it'll be considered to be a chronic illness, then, isn't it? So anything which will be harmful for them, which will cause their health to deteriorate, then the person won't fast. Equally, if somebody needs to take insulin shots, it's injected, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, anything which is injected into the veins will not break the fast. But anything which is injected directly to the stomach will break the fast. So if somebody had, I was reading about these energy boosters, you can inject into your veins and you get energy. It won't break your fast because it is not. You're not injecting into the stomach. Does that make sense? But if it's given to the stomach directly, then the fast will break. So we can advise your patients about that. Anyway, are we happy with that? Any other questions? Yes.
What if the illness is unknown and they don't know if it's a long-term or short-term condition?
Get advice from the doctor and go on what they say. So if they say you're going to be on this medicine for a long time and they can't tell you for how long, then go with this. If they say no, you need this for the next few years, then in that situation I would say then don't pay for the thingy and keep it up afterwards. Anything else? No? Okay, let's move on, inshallah. Okay, so this is the heavy topic now. Kaffarah, expiation or compensation, and Qadaa, making up fast. It's a lengthy hadith. Does anybody want to read it? Okay, I'll just read it. وعن ابي هريره رضي الله تعالى عنه قال جاء رجل الى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال هلكت يا رسول الله قال وما اهلكك قال وقعت على امرأتي في رمضان فقال هل تجد ما تعتق رقبة قال لا قال فهل تستطيع أن تصوم شهرين متتابعين قال لا قال فهل تجد ما تطعم 60 مسكينا قال لا ثم جلس فأتي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعرق فيه تمر فقال تصدق بهذا قال أعلى أفقر منا فما بين لابتيها أهل بيت أحوج إليه منا فضحك النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حتى بدأت أنيابه ثم قال اذهب فأطعمه أهلك رواه السبعة واللفظ للمسلمين. Narrated Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, O Messenger of Allah, I am ruined. He asked him, what has ruined you? He replied, I had intercourse with my wife during Ramadan. He then asked him, can you get a slave to free? Can you get a slave to free? He said, no. He asked, can you fast 2 consecutive months? He said, no. He asked, can you provide food for 60 poor people? He said, no. He then sat down. Meanwhile, an araq means like a basket or a container kind of thing, containing dates was brought to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, give this as sadaqah. The man said, am I to give to one who is poorer than we are? Meaning his family. There is no family between the 2 mountains of Al-Madinah more in need of it than mine. The Prophet ﷺ thereupon laughed till his premolar teeth appeared. He then said, go and feed your family with it. Narrated. So this can be found in all the books of Hadith. Okay. Now this Hadith has many different versions of it. Okay. This Hadith has many different versions of it. Sometimes the order is slightly different. So in this one, the Prophet ﷺ first he said to him that free the slave first, and then if that's not possible, then go fast for 2 months consecutively. And if that's not possible, then what do? You feed 60 people. Okay, so those are the 3 expiations of somebody who breaks their fast. Okay. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah in Fath al-Bari, he says that more than 30 companions have narrated this hadith with this order, and therefore this order will be given preference. Everybody understand that? So we're not going to look at the ones that have the different orders, but because more have narrated this particular order. So if a person is going to compensate for a fast, you have to follow this order. Okay, I'm going to come back to that discussion again. Now, this particular hadith, Ibn Hajar has derived more than 20 points of benefit from it. And Sheikh Nuruddin Aitar, he says that there's an individual scholar that he knows that has written over 2 volumes about this hadith alone. So you can imagine how knowledgeable these scholars were. Okay, so as we can see in this particular hadith, that this individual, he had a relationship with his wife during the day, knowingly. He had a relationship with his wife during the day normally. And then it continues, the hadith continues. Does this ruling now only apply to somebody who has relationship during the day, or does it also apply to somebody who has eaten and who has drank during the day also knowingly? Does everyone understand my question? This hadith is specific to one thing, isn't it? This particular hadith is specific to that one action. But does this also apply to somebody who has been eating and drinking also?
Yeah.
What do you think, Sheikh? Very upset.
Hanafi, yes.
Hanafi, yes. Go on.
Yeah, Hanafi, yes.
Hanafi, yes.
And the rest, no.
Automatically everybody else know, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, good attempt. Anybody else?
Maliki says yes, but everyone else said no.
Maliki says yes and everybody else says no. And you've got an agenda against the Malikis.
Everyone says no?
Everybody says no. So, the Hanafis and the Malikis, they say that eating and drinking is also included in this. Because Imam Malik narrates the same hadith. Imam Malik narrates the same hadith, but in that hadith it says that أَنَّ رَجُلًا أَفْطَرَ فِي رَمَضَانِ. It has not used the word having relationship with the wife, but rather a man has broken his fast in Ramadan, and they've kept it generic. And for that reason, the version that he narrates, he's taken from that. And as we know, Imam Malik, he has a book called the Muwatta, and he bases his rulings on that. The Muwatta of Imam Malik, which is a famous book, everybody studies it, people study it. So in that, he's got a narration that a man, he broke his fast. How he broke his fast is not defined in the hadith. And for that reason, the Malikis and the Hanafis have taken the opinion that eating and drinking is also included in that. Everybody understand this so far? Which automatically means that the Hanbalis and the Shafi'is, they only restrict the kafara to somebody who has had relationship during the day of Ramadan. And they say in response to the hadith of Imam Malik, that Imam Malik's hadith is generic, and this hadith or this version has come to restrict it and give us more clarity to it. Does that make sense to everyone? So they've taken the opinion that if somebody eats or drinks, they'll be sinful, but you won't have to go through this process. Everybody understand? You won't have to go through this particular process. Now, do we have to follow this order? If somebody does commit one of these sins, do we have to follow the order, yes or no?
No.
No.
There's no slaves
Hanafi, yes.
There's no slaves.
these days.
It's a good question, a good answer, you know. So can you just go to step number 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, straight to step number 2. Can you go to 3?
After 2, yeah.
After 2. Okay.
Hanafi, yes.
Hanafi, yes. Okay. So the Hanafis, the Shafi'is, and the Hanbalis, they say you have to follow the order. You have to follow the order. If somebody is unable to free a slave, because we don't have slaves anymore, do we? You know, Islam put in measures to eradicate slavery, but slavery was something normal back then. Anyway, so many people perhaps were doing this, isn't it? So they slave free, no more slaves left anymore. Allahu A'lam. Anyway, slaves, you can't do it, you can't afford a slave, okay, 2 months consecutively. Now when a person has to fast for 2 months consecutively, they have to ensure that either of the Eid don't fall in that, number 1, or Ayyam al-Tashriq, the days of eating and drinking. Because if those days come in the middle, it's not consecutive. So it has to be out of those times. Does that make sense? So you won't get the first Eid anyway, or Ramadan Eid anyway, because you have to finish off Ramadan first. But when it comes to the other Eid, the big Eid, we call it the big Eid, though there's 3 days you can't, so you have the day of Eid and you have 3 days afterwards where you're not allowed to fast. So it has to be outside of that time if somebody is going to make it up. And then if a person isn't able to do so, if they're an old person or something like that, then it comes to the third one. What do? The person will feed 60 people. Now, in the case that we have here right now, this individual, he wasn't able to do that either. So this hadith basically tells us everything. What happens in that case? Now, in this particular hadith, we find that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, take it as a sadaqah, give it as sadaqah. And when he said that there's nobody more in need of it than me, he said, okay, you eat it yourself. The scholars, there's a long discussion behind it. You know, is it that the Prophet ﷺ forgave him, or is it that somebody can't afford it, that he's forgiven and he's no longer responsible for the kaffarah? Is he no longer responsible for it? The scholars, they all agree, no, the kaffarah is still binding. And in this particular situation, the Prophet ﷺ giving him the food because he's in need of it is not a sign to say that he no longer has to pay the kaffarah. It's just, he's in need of it, so here you take it. That's what it is. So that kaffarah will be binding, and if he is able to complete one of the 3, he will have to do it. And if he doesn't, then he won't be held responsible for it. But as soon as a situation comes upon him where he is able to do one of the 3, he'll have to complete it. Does that make sense? And so if somebody isn't able to do it for whatever reason, if somebody is, for example, disabled, but through the will of Allah, the person regains the health, then he'll have to keep it 2 months consecutive, or whichever way. Or somebody out of a job is can't afford it at all, and then Allah gives him wealth, then he'll have to do it. Does that make sense? So it's not that I'm so poor that's it, it's just gonna go over me and that's it, done. It's a major thing, it's a major sin. Good.
The word of the scholars that was it like the Hanafi, Shafi'i, and Hanbali?
They say you have to do it in order, and Imam Malik, because he narrates all the other versions as well, he says because of it coming in different order, the versions of the hadith, for that reason he says order is not necessary. Go on.
So can I give you some, so come back to the chronic illness one.
Chronic illness, okay.
So let's say they can't obviously free slave. They can't fast 6 days continuously because obviously they're.
Okay, so they can't free slave because they've got obviously we don't have slaves anymore. Okay,
60 days they can't fast because they're chronically ill.
Yeah. Do they have savings?
Yeah, so that's my question. So I was going to say, if they want to feed 60 people and they don't have savings, can someone? My question is, can someone do it on their behalf?
Yeah, it's not an issue.
They can.
They can. Somebody can do it on their behalf. Equally, you don't have to do 60 different individuals. You can be the same one person, but 60 times. So 60 meals. It has to be miskin man, it has to be somebody who is in need of it. Inshallah, Allah has provided for me, alhamdulillah. Sheikh's always thinking about food, and that's all it is.
It has to be miskin, does it? It can't be general.
Yeah, it says miskin there. Sittina miskina. And interestingly, go on.
So it's not 60 people for 60 days, but just one person could be one person 60 times.
Yeah.
Or 60 people at once.
Yeah, or 60 in one go. Yes, brother. What's the definition of miskin? So somebody who does not have, who has nothing, basically. So there's usually a difference between faqir and miskin, but they use interchangeably. Some will say faqir is somebody who can get by, but does not have to pay zakat, and miskin is somebody who can't get by. And some have said it's the other way around. So basically somebody who is not off well, and somebody who could do with the assistance. Anything else here? Any other questions about this? Go on.
So according to that hadith you mentioned about giving to your relative, because the guy said that his family is poor. So would presidents be over relatives or miskin rather than?
So giving, what do you mean?
So if you've got a relative who is poor, with
Yes.
miskin, but
So is it
not
better
as
to?
miskin as-
So if you're gonna feed somebody, is it better to feed a family member or a stranger? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
So it's better to feed a family member. Why? It's two reasons. Number one is that you're fulfilling your sadaqah or your kafara, and number two is they call it sila rahim, silatul rahim. You're maintaining family ties. So you're strengthening the bond of family ties.
Yeah.
Going back to the thingy, the fasting, the traveling and fasting one, is it better for somebody to break the fast, or is it better for somebody to fast whilst traveling? Huh?
Yeah, that's the person.
What's the better one? What's the better? If somebody is able to do both, either of them, which is better?
The practice to eat is better to break it.
Huh?
Break the fast.
Break the fast.
Keep the fast is Ramadan a blessed time and everything.
So it's better to keep the fast. Allah says, وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. It is better for you to fast, if you're able to do so. That is the better option, because you won't get the same reward of Ramadan outside of Ramadan when you're making up for it.
What did the hadith had like a wording saying that it's could you go back to it?
فَمَنْ أَخَذَ بِهَا فَحَسَنٌ. It's okay.
He has done well.
Yeah.
Acted upon it.
He's good. There's no blame on him. That's what it means.
Okay, I thought
It means there's no blame on him.
Right, okay. Right, yeah. Translation made it sound as though like it's a good thing that they've done.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, sure. You know, for going back to travel as well, is there like a certain distance after travel from travel, or can you just like say?
I'm not going to go into that discussion again. We've already had this discussion so many times. We'll talk about it afterwards. We'll talk about it afterwards.
Cardiff is a car.
What I'll do is I'll give you my dissertation.
Cardiff is a car.
I'll give you my dissertation that I did for iftar, which was women traveling without mahram, and in that I went into all 4 schools. What they say is the distance of traveling. And I've explained it there. Inshallah, I can read it up there. Yeah, that'll be better, I think. Okay. Are we okay with this hadith? So what's interesting is Allah also uses the same penalty for somebody who does something called dhihar. Anybody heard of dhihar? So when a husband likens his wife to his mother, so dhihar literally means back. So if somebody says, they used to say in back in those times anyway, that you're like my mother, you're like my mother's back. Sometimes out of honor, sometimes as a means of saying talaq to the wife, because you can't marry your mother, and if your wife is like your mother's back, you no longer want to be in marriage with her. So they used to use these certain terms where they liken the wife to somebody they're not allowed to marry. So even if they say compare the wife to the sister or something like that, in a derogatory way with the intention of talaq. So the only way to compensate for that and not be able to continue with the marriage, Allah the Almighty, He also gives the same conditions at the beginning of Surah Al-Mujadala, 28th juz. قد سمع الله قول التي تجادلك في زوجها وتشتكي إلى الله. There's a woman that came to the Prophet ﷺ, and Allah says, Allah has heard the complaint of that lady. Allah يسمع تحاوركما. Allah listens to your conversation. إن الله سميع بصير. الذين يظاهرون, those who do dhihar, this method of talaq where you compare to a family, and then Allah says فمن لم يستطع فإطعام 60 مسكينا فمن لم يجد فصيام شهرين متتابعين, 2 consecutive fasts, or عتق رقبة مؤمنة, releasing a slave and things like that. So he talks about all that, and over there the condition is applied that when you're fasting the 2 months consecutively, or you're fasting, you're you're releasing the slave, it has to do before you go next to your wife again. So it's just interesting that it's a similar thing here.
So this might be a strange point, but when you're going to be either freeing the slave, feeding the people, or fasting for 2 consecutive months, obviously this is going to be, it might be noticeable to people that you're doing this, but you don't want to obviously expose your own sins. So how are you going to go about that? Like if you're too fast,
So you can free a slave and you can call it sadaqah. It's not an issue.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, but
Okay, you don't have slaves anymore. Fast 2 months, no problem.
yeah,
But if you fast 2 months, you're going to be so
yeah, like consecutively.
If you're not Christian,
You don't need to tell people you're fasting.
Yeah, true.
You don't need to tell people you're fasting.
Intermittent fasting. Just call it diet.
Call it diet. They say, give you the solution. Call it diet.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
But you are meant to hide it though, yeah?
Any good deed that you don't have to expose to the people or show to people, you should keep it secret anyway, isn't it?
Fine, yeah.
To maintain your sincerity and things like that. Allah does say, about sadaqah and things like that. Do make it public also, so they can encourage others to do it. الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُم بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ سِرًّا وَعَلَانِيَةً, in secrecy and in public. فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ, their reward is with Allah, and all that. So at times you can do something publicly to encourage others, but if that's going to change your intention and it's going to become of showing off and things like that, then that's not true.
Yeah.
Tell people about it. Sometimes you have to do it to establish authority and things like that as well. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions about that? No? Okay. And I think last one, we'll go one more hadith left inshallah, and then we'll conclude. When Aisha, so this is about major impurity. Everybody understand what I mean by major impurity, yeah? So in Islam we have minor impurity and major impurity. Minor impurity would be when somebody breaks the wudu. So whether it's going to the bathroom, or somebody passes wind, or according to some of the schools, somebody's bleeding, the wudu is broken, yeah? That's the minor impurity. Major impurity would be if a man ejaculates, or if a sister comes off her menses, or during the menses. So what's the ruling for that and fasting? So we'll read the hadith inshallah and just explain the rulings. وعن عائشة وأم سلمة رضي الله تعالى عنهما أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يصبح جنبا من جماع ثم يغتسل ويصوم متفق عليه وزاد مسلم في حديث أم سلمة ولا يقضي. Narrated Aisha and Salama رضي الله عنهما. So both of them are the wives of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم used to get up at dawn while in a state of janaba, sexual impurity. Then he would take a bath and fast, agreed upon, and Muslim added in the hadith of Salama, he would not make up the fast. Now what this hadith is telling us is that the Prophet ﷺ, before the time of Fajr, he would have a relationship with his wives, and before Fajr would come in, he would not have the ghusl. So he's in the state of major impurity. Does that make sense? And he'd have his suhoor, and then the Fajr time would come in. So which means he started his day in a state of major impurity, in junub. It's not haram to be in junub, by the way. That includes also like wet dreams and things like that. If somebody's had a wet dream and they've woken up, if somebody's had a wet dream and things like that, and they woke up and it's time for suhoor, there's less time, so you go to eat, and then you hear the muaddin give the adhan. What do you do in that situation? Is it that your fast doesn't count, or it does count? So in that condition, or in that state, purity is not a condition for fasting. Yeah? It's only refraining from those three things after Fajr has started. This is taking place before Fajr started. So for that reason, the fast will be intact. So if somebody wakes up, they've seen that they need to go for a ghusl, but it's suhoor, only 10 minutes left, have your suhoor first. Then go for your shower and everything else, get clean, and then pray your Fajr. Your fast will be intact. Equally for the sisters, if they wake up and they see that the menses have come to an end, it's come to an end, but there's only 10 minutes left for suhoor. Should I go for ghusl or should I have suhoor? Have your suhoor first. After you've had your suhoor, then go have your ghusl, and after that, pray Fajr. It's not an issue. But as soon as Fajr started, then you can't do anything. Does that make sense? And after Fajr starts, if I've already mentioned the masala, after Fajr starts and it's during the day, if a brother has a wet dream, I think we've already spoken about this, isn't it? If somebody has a wet dream and he wakes up, he just has his ghusl, he does not need to, it does not break the fast. Wet dream does not break the fast, okay? Equally, when he's doing the ghusl, we find in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he instructed one of the companions that when you go for the ghusl, don't sniff the water too hard. Because Mumbai said it's a manfad. Don't let the water go up the nose and into the mouth. Don't sniff it too high. So take it easy basically. If somebody was to masturbate during the daytime, you know, whether it's haram or not, that's another whole discussion altogether. But what I'm saying is the fast will break, and you will only have to do qada, but not kafara. Okay, qada, but not kafara. And I already spoke about if a sister's menses come to an end during the day, isn't it? They just have the ghusl, and whether they have to observe imsak, not eat and drink to the end of the day. Hanafi says yes, you have to, and other schools they say it's mustahab. Okay, everybody understand? Okay, khalas. Yes, go on.
You know, you said like before Fajr, if you're still janaba.
Yeah.
Does that mean you can still pray in that?
No. So in the state of janaba, if somebody is in major impurity, they are not allowed to pray. They are not allowed to come into the masjid. They can't come into the masjid. And some opinions, well, everybody will say when you're in janaba for sexual impurity, you cannot recite Quran. You cannot recite Quran. And if a sister is in a menses, are they allowed to recite Quran or not? Classically speaking, the scholars, all four schools said no. But you have other opinions like Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and others who have said that it's permissible for them to do it, to recite Quran without touching the Quran physically. And I remember listening to a fatwa of Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah. He was saying that perhaps we can adopt this for those sisters which are half-faith and things like that, so they can maintain their revision and things like that, or who are teachers in a Islamic Quran class or something like that. Okay. Any other questions? Go on.
Is it also necessary for someone, for a sister who they wake up and they started on their menses, would they have to then also be near by mouth as well?
They wake up and
so they wake up and then
during the day?
Yeah, during the day.
Yeah, so it goes back to, the Hanafi schools, they say yes, nil by mouth till the end of the day, and the other three schools, they say it's mustahab.
So when, and that's when they start their menses?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine.
No, sorry, starting, not ending.
Yeah, starting.
No, so as soon as the menses start, then they can start eating and drinking, it's not an issue.
Fine, yeah.
Because they're not allowed to fast.
Yeah.
Or imitate a fasting person.
Okay, fine, yeah.
Okay, so if somebody starts during the day, that's it. So there's actually a masala which says if a sister broke her fast earlier in the day, and now she needs to compensate for that, isn't it? But then by chance before Maghrib, she started a period, that is forgiven. That is forgiven, and she's not held responsible for that because it was going to break anyway. Does that make sense?
The reason why I asked that question is there's sometimes a culture behind the fact that like when sisters are on their menses,
Yeah.
that they pretend that they're fasting.
Okay, yeah.
So would you say that's impermissible then?
They're pretending they're fasting.
Yeah, yeah.
Or is it that they're not eating in front of you?
No. I mean, like they encourage not to eat and drink.
Oh, okay, no, that's not right.
Yeah,
That's not right.
Okay, fine.
I mean, they don't have to flaunt it, but they are allowed to eat and drink. It's not an issue. I know because, especially if you have a family with brothers and things like that, it's a sensitive issue, isn't it? So you don't want them to know, oh, you're eating and things like that, isn't it? So, you know, as long as they know that they're not fasting and they're not supposed to be doing it, it's fine. Anything else? Yes, go on.
I don't know if we're going to cover this or not. We're talking about Kaffarah Qadaa. What if someone has forgotten that one, 2 times they missed their fast from Ramadan?
Okay.
The next one.
Actually, so that's a very good question. It doesn't matter how many offenses you make, something like that. It doesn't matter how many offenses you make in that Ramadan, there will only be one expiation. One will compensate for them all.
But there are some that say that it's each one, isn't it?
Not that I can remember.
Because I remember I read it.
Let me double check that for you then.
I showed it to you.
It won't be like if you miss all 30 days, for each 30, you have to do 2 months consecutive.
I saw
You're not going to finish in a lifetime. But let me double check that for you, okay?
So one.
One will compensate. Yeah.
So one kafara will compensate every fast you've ever missed in your life.
Yeah.
Are you going to check that first?
I will double check it though before I give you a proper evidence.
Is that same with an oath then?
Say again.
If you break an oath.
Not necessarily.
So for example, you make one oath and then you break that same oath multiple times.
Well, yeah, one kafara, yeah. Because after you've broken it once, it's broken, that's it.
So when you have to do qada, you have to make up the fast.
Yeah.
But you've forgotten how.
Actually, wait, before that, so one other point I forgot to mention is, when we go back to qada, even though you make up these, or you do one of the three, you also have to make up that one day. So it could be 2 months and 1 day. Does that make sense? Or freeing a slave and 1 day, or feed 60 people and 1 day. Because you still have to make up that 1 day. Okay, important point.
Yeah, so
Go on.
with the qada, if you've forgotten how many fasts you forgot, you missed, or you've forgotten, and you have to make up before the next Ramadan, right?
It's not necessarily, there is a PDF, but I'll have to double check that for you. But
But if you forgot, so what do you do with that state?
guesstimate.
That's it. Inshallah, you'll find it.
Yeah. Just keep extra months, man, no worries. Can't go wrong. No, but if you keep your Mondays and Thursdays or something like that, and you
With the
make-
intention to-
with the intention that if I missed anything out, then I'm keeping you for that, then inshallah it'll be compensated for. Yes?
So the 2 months have to be consecutive. So then
Consecutive, yeah.
The days that the specific days you're making, or do they also have to be consecutive? Or
No, so that one specific day can be any time of the year. But those 2 months need to be consecutive. شهرين متتابعين.
What if you broke one?
If you break one, you start again.
Like on the 59th day, you just broke.
But obviously this does not apply to the sisters.
Also, if you fast for 1 month, you miss a day, you've got to start a month
Start again, yeah. Obviously the sisters will have the exception of the days that they're on the menses, and then they just continue counting after the day after that.
What if you're ill, like?
What about the brothers?
I'm not going to dignify that with an answer, but
So, say if you know, in terms of when you select to fast the 2 months, say certain months it's a shorter day. Is it okay to?
no problem at all. Yeah, so if you have to do 2 months, then choose the winter time. But
So what if during the Kaffarah period you're ill, or like you want to just, or you're journeying to my work, you're ill, or you have a reason to miss the fast? You still have to start again, or do you just miss that day and then carry on?
it's a good question. I'll double check that.
So
Make a note of that.
if you're doing the 2 months
Can
fast,
you make a note of that question?
what if you're traveling in that 2 months and you break your fast?
So it's the same what he's asking. So let me double check that and give it to you. So I don't know if the expectation is that you have to still fast or not. I'll have to check.
Are you going to also check whether or not you have to make the qada before the next Ramadan? You said.
Yeah. And the vast majority say that you can do it, but I know there is an opinion which says no, it has to be before. I believe it's Imam Shafi, but I need to double check it before.
Sorry, what was the question?
Yes.
Whether or not you have to make up the fast before the next Ramadan.
Oh, that's a very good question. So we will be calculating with the lunar calendar, the Hijri calendar, and not with the Christian calendar, the Gregorian calendar.
What was the question?
So when we calculate the 2 months, is it going to be the Hijri calendar or is it going to be the Christian era calendar? It would be the lunar calendar. Anything else? We're going to nitty gritty things now, isn't it?
You said you can't fall in the 3 days of the
Yeah.
So you wouldn't fast with Qada then obviously. You wouldn't
Well,
fast
if you
with
started
Shawwal
beforehand.
Oh, so you can fast in Shawwal and Qada then?
Yeah. But the Hijri will have to start after the thing, after the Hajj period is over. Any questions on that side?
So it's very, you know, with the sickle person, you mentioned we should give poor people food. Is it better if they pay themselves and save up all the time, or if you see that they're struggling?
It's always better to do it yourself because then you're not troubling somebody else. But if somebody is happy to pay for you and things like that, that's fine as well. It's not an issue. One of the things that we'll be studying next week will be, can you fast on somebody else's behalf? They passed away and things like that. So we'll look at that next week, inshallah. Anything else? Go on.
Yeah, so this might be a stupid question. But for example, you are fasting while traveling.
Yeah.
And obviously the time for fast.
Yeah.
That place is come, but it's shorter than.
But it doesn't matter.
You break the fast according to where
You break your fast according to their location. And if it's longer, you wait until their Maghrib comes in, and then you break it there. Anything else? Okay, so I think that we're done for today, inshallah. No other questions? No? Inshallah, we'll conclude there. Inshallah. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاكم الله خيرا.